It is no secret that Herschel Walker's doomed Senate campaign was an absolute disaster. From the outside, of course, looking in, it looked like there was a man who knew very little or next to nothing about any of the issues that he actually wanted to talk about, or even about the office that he wasn't even sure if he was running for the House or the Senate. So that if it looked that bad from the outside, how bad do you think it looked from the inside? Well, it turns out worse than you could ever imagine. According to staffers speaking to NBC News about the doomed campaign, well, it had some problems from the very start. And of course, the main problem was Herschel Walker. They said that Walker first didn't even set up a traditional campaign structure, according to the people who worked for him. So decisions that were normally left, for example, to professional staffers, from media buys to the campaign's daily messaging, to vendors who sold, campaign like online swag and stuff like that, to picking event locations, were instead controlled and often micromanaged by Walker and I think more his wife, Julie Blanchard. So a lot of those decisions ended up with her instead of the professionals. And what were the professionals doing? They're mainly fighting each other. Now, look, a lot of this was internal dysfunctional campaign stuff. There were delayed decisions, there were redundancies, there were all sorts of issues. And of course, that bled into things like fundraising, which was another disaster. Now, other staff told NBC News that Walker was also, and this, of course, is getting to his issues, his past. They said that he was evasive about his personal life and had prohibited them from corresponding with the 4 different women who had 4 different children with Walker. So, by the way, I got 4, baby mamas, and you can't talk to any of them. Okay, but how are we supposed to get ahead of the scandal if they're discovered? But Herschel, no, I'm watching Fight Night. Okay, leave me alone. So look, disaster. Now, 2 staffers who said that Walker was not forthcoming about at least 2 of his children, learning about them only when they had reached out to his son, Christian Walker. Now, Christian Walker, of course, is one of Herschel's adult children, also right winger, Trump supporter, etc. But was also like, please don't run. Don't run. Like, they're gonna rip you apart. This is a disaster. Don't do it. Now, obviously, he did not listen, but the campaign still believed that Herschel would at least listen to Christian about a couple of things. In fact, the staff attempted to get Christian to persuade his father to stop posting stream of consciousness videos on Twitter at 4 a.m. That sounds very healthy and normal. I'm just saying. The message was, would you be open to talking to him about some of the messaging stuff? I think he listens to you more than any of us, wrote one staffer. So, okay, messaging stuff, sure. That sounds like a fairly routine thing. But no, the next quote is even better. The staffer then asks Christian to, quote, ask him to stop being a moron on TV. Read your playbook before opening your mouth. We're just desperate. You picked the winning campaign when, your staffers have to beg your son to then come talk to you, about, how to stop being a moron. Okay. Or you as a staffer have to beg to say, please, talk to my candidate. He's a dumbass. Please. And again, that's not the only time they reached out to Christian. In fact, they relied on him a decent amount. In fact, here's what Christian told NBC News via text about, what he did for the campaign. Quote, I told them about his children back in January, months before any story came out about it. I gave them a head start about all the information that I knew. Now, of course, with Herschel Walker and his very interesting past, that wasn't all the information. But Christian said, I gave him everything that I knew. But there was stuff that Christian did not know. So that leads me to the Oppo research. So look, all campaigns, they do Oppo research. It's routine. This is part of every campaign. And look, they do it on themselves and they do it to other candidates. And of course, the reason they do Oppo research on themselves or their own candidate is so that they can head off any scandals. So they go and look for, these issues and they go, okay, this is what we found in your past. You're going to have to answer up for this. Okay. And sure, they get their candidates prepped. That's why, you have these canned answers for some of these candidates. They have them ready. All right. So now the thing is that there are a lot of stuff that Walker did not share with his campaign. In fact, they had a huge Oppo file on Walker as early as September of last year. Political consultants with Georgia roots, according to NBC News, Austin Chambers, Paul Bennick, and Nick Ayers, who had served as former Vice President Mike Pence's chief of staff, had met with Walker before he announced his candidacy on August 25th, 2021. So they met with him. They decided, okay, we're going to help you out. We're going to, do an Oppo research file on you, right? To help your campaign. So what they did is that they hired a firm to do that. And the firm, within 2 weeks, assembled a 500-page dossier filled with possible business scandals, some of which I know we've covered, controversial quotes from Walker, and allegations of domestic violence and bizarre behavior, according to 4 different sources who had seen the Oppo book. Not just a file, a book. 500 pages of, wow, what the hell? In fact, Chambers had told Walker in a July meeting, quote, we found 500 pages in 2 weeks on you, and God only knows what else is out there. Oh my God. Again, they had all of that. And Walker is like, I'm going to run anyway. And again, it wasn't even all the negative information, as stuff had come out later that wasn't in that Oppo file that they didn't prepare for. The campaign, for example, did not know that Herschel Walker had paid for abortions. Oops. Turned out to be a little bit of a scandal, wasn't it? Oh, now the other issue here is, and it's funny because they talk about how Herschel Walker really didn't listen to anybody, but he sure had a lot of people talking at him. In fact, there were a ton of advisors. One of them, who was hired early on in the campaign, Heath Garrett, said this, quote, there were too many people in Washington, New York, and Mar-a-Lago advising Herschel at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's what I experienced in 2 or 3 months. Now, that said, Garrett also said, look, maybe if we had had the money, then we could have won this election. And by the way, it was a fairly close race. I mean, first, you had the first election, before it went to a runoff, having to go to a runoff because it was so close. And then it goes to a runoff, and still, what was it, 52-48? Around there? That was still relatively close, even with all the scandal that Herschel Walker had. And so he makes the case that, look, if we had more funding, we were getting outspent 3-1 by Warnock's team. Maybe if we had had more money and been able to run more ads, basically blanket the airways with, our message or propaganda, whatever you want to call it, then maybe would have been able to pull out a win. Now, what's funny is this kind of dovetails into a story that I had done previously, whereas all these Republicans were basically using and grifting and exploiting Walker's campaign. Quote, other Republicans began using the runoff as a gimmick to fundraise for their own political ends while barely sharing any of the money with the Walker campaign. The NRSC, for example, the Republican Senate fundraising arm, took 99 cents out of every dollar fundraised for Herschel Walker. 99 cents. For a while, Donald Trump was taking 90%. Until, he got caught. And they decided to, bring it down to 50-50, which is what, of course, Senator Mike Lee and House member Burgess Owens were taking from any donation through, the fundraising pages that they shared purporting to support Walker. They still took half. I mean, hilarious. Hilarious. And then, of course, we get to the handlers. Specifically, Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, who, basically watched over him so that they could, prevent him from saying anything stupid. And as well as the NBC report, they said that they had to help him make the fundraising pitch for his website that the candidate had trouble delivering. They went on, of course, to talk about his message discipline that had issues, and of course the aforementioned rant about werewolves and vampires during a campaign speech where he just went into Fright Night. Yeah. So, and then of course there's China with they're sending us, we're sending our good air over to China, and China's sending their bad air over here. So that's why we have to have gas guzzlers. By the way, did you know that I was a cop? No, you actually weren't. Look, I got a badge. Yeah, that's not a real badge. So, look, basically, to recap, he had a ton of scandals and was a disastrous candidate. And he was less than forthcoming about them. Maybe he forgot. I don't know. Maybe he did it, with a different personality. Like that different personality had done those things. Again, he said, and I'm not joking, he said, look, I got multiple personalities. Somewhere like at least like 20. He's who knows? Maybe that other person did that. I don't remember what he did. I don't remember what that Herschel Walker did. So I can't share that with my campaign. So who knows, right? And so he had that. And also, he and his wife tried to micromanage the campaign with zero knowledge about how to run a campaign. Couldn't stay on message, couldn't stop saying dumb things, had all these people, including Donald Trump, whispering in his ear, and yet couldn't raise any money because everybody else was taking it from him. While the staffers would rip into each other about, hey, maybe you should actually try to put a fundraising pitch out there. Oh, but that makes him sound like a used car salesman. We can't have that. Oh, you must be smoking drugs. Well, you're the one that's smoking drugs. That's a literal argument that they had. It's in the article. So, and by the way, this was all while Raphael Warnock's campaign was crushing in fundraising and had a consistent message. Which is why he was able to win in Georgia. So, and the other thing is, of course, how Walker had an unearned confidence. And that's the other thing, right? And you see this a lot with right-wingers. The total unearned confidence. He believed that he could just coast off his football career. Impressive as it was. That's not something that translates into a good political career. And he thought that everybody would just ignore all the insane things, that I or one of my multiple personalities had done. And they'll just put me in a position that I'm deeply unqualified for. Well, it didn't work out that way. And that's good. And by the way, Walker campaign staffers by election day knew. They knew they were going to lose. In fact, one Republican consultant said when he saw a group of his staffers gathered at a restaurant on Monday, quote, they looked like a pack of beat puppies. What were they, Dr. Oz's? Oh, I'm sorry, that would be dead puppies. Dr. Oz, puppy killer. Now, another quote here from Dan McLagan, right, who worked for Walker's GOP primary challenger, Gary Black. Again, this is one of the people that Herschel Walker had to beat in a primary to get into this general election. He said this, that Walker was a train wreck and that the Republican establishment did not listen to their warnings. Well, what we just established is the absolute floor of the GOP base in Georgia. No kidding. This is what you get when you have a candidate who threatened women, stalked them, paid them to have abortions, said crazy things, and has an adversarial relationship with the English language. Oh, damn. Oh, vicious. Maybe next time we'll learn. Are you sure? Herschel Walker didn't just materialize out of nowhere. No, he had to run through a Republican primary against other Republicans. And you don't get through a primary unless you win, unless you get more votes. That's how it works. Enough people looked at Herschel Walker, the Republican voters looked at Herschel Walker and said, no, that's it. That's my guy. That's it. That's it. Nailed it. We're going to vote for this guy. He is going to win a general election. We know it. We know it. Well, it's not the staff that needs to learn. It's not the Republican establishment, right? Republican establishment was pulling their hair out. No, please go. Oh, God, don't run this guy. Oh, for God's sakes, don't do it. Don't do it. Please, please. Didn't listen to him. So it's funny when Marjorie Greene, for example, comes out and blames Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell for Herschel Walker losing. And the fact that, Herschel Walker should have just, had me speak more. It should have brought me to more campaign events. Why? No. In reality, the people who need to learn are the voters who continue to vote for awful, insane primary candidates that have no shot in the general.